Some definitions and some explanations. Specifically today, I'm going to talk about art, love, and platonic ideals. Um, I am a deconstructionist, which means that I don't believe in a lot of the structures that are set up to make you believe that things are important. I very, very much don't believe that something is good just because a certain person wrote it or a certain set of people say it's good. So a lot of my beliefs on this stuff are a little weird. I believe that art is anything that inspires emotion, and that includes negative emotions. So something that makes you angry, and was that there are two components to art. Something that inspires emotion and something that was constructed for that purpose. So if it was made for that purpose and it inspires an emotion in you, even if that emotion is anger or disgust or fear, then that is art. That's what I believe. You may believe something else. It's perfectly acceptable. What I believe is art is something constructed for a purpose and something that is inspiring of emotion. That includes things that make you cry or things that make you happy or things that make you, all of those things. Primarily, I want to talk about platonic ideals. A platonic ideal is the idea, it's based on the guy named Plato. It has nothing to do with non-romantic relationships. Actually, it might. Anyway, platonic ideals are the idea that all versions of something are descended from a perfect of that something. I know that doesn't make sense, so let me explain. You know how you can have a chair like my yellow IKEA chair over there. Where is it? All the way over there. Can you see it yet? That is a very different chair than a rolly chair that you would have in an office. Those are both chairs, though, and our mind instantly recognizes them as chairs. So both chairs are very, very different, but they are still recognizable as chairs. Table. A table could be a round table or a square table or a rectangular table. It could have 5 legs or 4 legs or 3 legs, but it's still a table. The idea is that somewhere in the universe there is a perfect table from which all other tables are descended. And that perfect table would be its platonic ideal. Same thing with colors. Like, for example, there are varying shades of red. If all versions of that red come from a perfect red that is somewhere out there, that every version of red came from, then that is the platonic ideal of red. And so the idea is that all of these things are tied together and all of these things come from this platonic ideal. And that platonic ideal may not exist in the world. It may exist separate from the world, but it's a way that ties together all the things that that are that thing. A platonic ideal of a car. There are many different shapes, sizes, differences about a car. I'm not getting enough oxygen. I'm sorry. I'm kind of sick. So I'm not getting enough oxygen, so I'm going to yawn a lot. But platonic ideals are the idea that there is some perfect version of that thing and all other things in it are based off of it. So closely tied in with that, I can't remember the technical name for this, but there is the idea of wholeness within that thing. And originally it came from, I believe, a ship. But when you had a ship, as parts became damaged, you replaced them and you replaced them and you replaced them until there's nothing left of the original ship. At what point does it stop being the original ship? Because most people would say that replacing, a single board would not make it not the original ship. But replacing, the back half of it Would that make it a different ship? I mean, especially if it's called by the same name. And a lot of this is tied into the modern idea of transhumanism. We are able to do more and more and more with our bodies than we used to. We're able to do more and more with our minds. Well, we're not technically able to put ourselves into a computer now. We are able to do more and more simulation related to computers. So it's one of those questions where how augmented does a person have to be before not being a person anymore? Already we've got special places in the Olympics and in various things where we have people who have a disability that they have replaced with, the guy with the prosthesis that allow him to run faster than a normal person can. How far do we have to go? And this also touches on the very, very taboo subjects that I'm not going to be talking about here of the transgender athletes competitions. And I don't want you to comment on that, so please don't. But other things are when you are augmented, when you are changed physically, or if at the point where we get computers or where we always have some sort of technological augmentation, at what point are we no longer what we started as? At what point are we different? And the idea of platonic ideals ties into that because it becomes, you become not certain where that platonic ideal starts and when you become a different platonic, when you change what you're looking for. And so a lot of these things, when it comes to a story, if I'm telling the story of Cinderella, at what point, how many changes have to be made before it's an entirely different story? If it becomes a same-sex story where Cinderella is and a kiss from a beautiful princess, is that the same story? I mean, if everything else remains the same, what needs to change for it to be entirely different? Because we have a limited number of basic stories. Sorry. So sorry, guys. Anyway, as a deconstructionist on all of this stuff, and I have a paper that I'm writing right now about art and platonic ideals and whether art is the creation of many or the creation of one and all that sort of stuff. So it all ties together, and I have a very holistic view of all this stuff. But when it all comes together, if you believe in the idea of platonic ideals, and it's not something everybody agrees on. I mean, a lot of people don't believe that there could be even a metaphorical perfect thing that all things are descended from. Because there are too many differences. There are too many things that are just not going to be the same no matter how similar something is. I mean, we have cats for the current example. All of my cats happen to have black hair and white, accent furs. And that's not all cats. But what ties them back to the platonic cat? House cats are very similar to big cats, but they're not the same. So what platonic similarities are they? I mean, does a cat have to be graceful? Anyway, it's one of those things that is worthy of question. And I wanted to define a couple of things so that I would be easier understood. So I have given you my definition of art, my definition of platonic ideals. I can't remember what the piecemeal thing is where you're explaining that the more something changes, when does its identity change? But it's very interesting to me. It's very, very interesting to study how things change and how we tie things back to these platonic ideals.